Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to today's conversation on Gift of Healing TV. I'm Sara Jane. I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host, Scott Holmes. Scott.
Hey.
And our two guests today for this particular program are Linda Marsanico. Linda.
Hi.
And Elizabeth McPherson. Now, you'll hear me call Elizabeth Beth, but Elizabeth McPherson. Hi, Beth.
Hi.
Thank you both for joining myself and Scott. This is part of our series, Selfish or Harder to Manipulate. All three of these wonderful people are co-authors with me in the book, I Didn't Become Selfish, I Became Harder to Manipulate. And what I would like to do is, I know we've got some little topics extra that we are going to talk about in this program, but I'd like to start with each of you, please. A little about yourself, why you felt drawn to this particular book and participating in it. And so I'm going to come to you first, Linda.
Thank you so much for allowing me to join you today, Sara. I'm remembering when you first asked about the book, I didn't think I had anything to talk about. And then you were very kind in your response, and I thought, well, I have had trauma. And I thought back to the trauma when I was in high school. And I very much wanted to be part of working with you. And I made the time. I don't know how I found the time, but I did. And as I wrote, it flowed. And I remembered things. I talked about my son, and I wanted him to read it before it was published. And I couldn't get him. He kept returning, we were trading phone calls. And he finally read it, and he said, it's lovely, it's fine, Ma. And I learned so much from writing that chapter, taking me back to the time of my youth and the trauma and the way that I responded, the way my family responded. I had experiences with depression and devastation and so many deep, harsh feelings, but I was able to come back from that. And it makes me a greater psychologist. It makes me more compassionate, because we were talking before, Beth, about we're all in a struggle. We all have our spiritual side, but we have our struggles, and we're vulnerable. And so when I realize that, it softens my heart, and it allows me to remember that we're all connected. So this has been a wonderful journey with you, Sara. You've been on my show, I'm on your show. Now we're celebrating this wonderful book, and the responses that you got when you put the title on Facebook, thousands, my goodness, and you responded to every one. So it does have a need, and I'm excited for the launch of the actual hardcover or the full book.
Thank you, Linda. Beth?
Well, we've been connected on LinkedIn, haven't we? And then you suddenly messaged me after like 2 years or something, isn't it, of being connected, and then asked to be on your show to talk about decluttering, which is what I do for a living. And the rest flowed from there, wasn't it? Because you very kindly asked me to contribute to the book. Because I think when we had that conversation together, we just covered all the topics, didn't we, from the trauma. And so therefore it just felt like a natural, a bit like Linda, just felt like a natural connection, didn't it, really? A natural flow. It's like one thing led to another thing. Because I'll never forget that conversation, because we just literally talked about everything, didn't we? We were talking about soul paths and books and, our past lives, afterlife, everything. It was all just all out there. So it was absolutely fantastic. It's not often that you meet someone that you don't know and you just literally, talk the whole, go through the gamut. So, yeah, I think the book really resonated with me because, I'm actually working on a full memoir. But in 2014, I was in quite a bit of a state, actually, mentally, physically and everything. And I was going into my menopause, and I literally I came to this kind of, I call it my hallelujah moment, because I literally just thought, I'm done. I'm done with this life. You know, I'm not happy. I'm not happy. Why am I not happy? You know, and I knew that I had to kind of, scraping is a horrible word, but scrape it all back and start like, you know, what was I like when I was a kid? You know, were my friends like? Who was I? Who was I as a child before all the stuff started to happen? You know, and then basically I call it my decluttering of my life, because my mental health was affecting my physical health, and well, really just my unhappiness was affecting everything. You know, I never was happy. That's the honest truth. I was very good at putting a big smiley positive state on my face, but behind that. So I think when you asked me to write the book, to do the chapters, I was really like, yes, because it was such a defining moment for me, really, to say, you know, I haven't changed, like you say. I've just got harder to manipulate. You know, it really was one of those moments, and it's defined me, really, and it's changed my life forever. I don't recognize the person I am now, in a good way, but I'm still a work in progress. I'm no angel, as I say to everyone.
So
particularly clients, when they call me an angel, I go, no, I'm not. No, I'm really not.
So the chapters are chapter 12 for Beth, from manipulation to freedom, how I decluttered my entire life from control. And then Linda, chapter 20, a most challenging time in my life, how I experienced and came back from trauma. So Scott, something from you, please.
Well, if anyone hasn't, who watches this program hasn't understood that Miss Sara collects people, extraordinarily so. She can connect with anyone at any time on any subject, and she has just got such a vast knowledge and experience, and she has exposed me to so much in the realm of people, and it's been extraordinary. So when she asked me about the book, I am a reformed people pleaser. I turn myself into pretzels time and time and time again, ignoring myself in order to make sure everybody around me was okay. And the problem was that when my wife passed and my daughters were out of the house, I had to deal with me for the very first time, because I couldn't concentrate on everybody else. And that's when I found who I was, and I became much less likely to put the cape on. So I kept it in the closet, did not strive to save everyone around me, but I looked inside, and I effectively saved myself by stopping being able, or being impulsively just generated to seeing how I could help other people, how I could make their lives better, instead of concentrating on myself.
Yeah.
And what I found is that once you concentrate on yourself and you are whole, you are so much more effective outside. You can help so many more people in so many other ways. And it just finding joy in that. I work in the school system, a local school system, and you're around kindergartners and first graders, and they are just full of energy, right? And there is joy, and everything is a challenge. Everything is, and they don't think of a challenge as bad. I can't do that well. They like, I'm going to be a singer when I grow up. I'm going to be a dancer when I grow up. I'm going to do all of these things. And I find that being around that, I can still be anything. I can't carry a tune in a paper bag, so I'm going to put the singing off. But if you've ever skipped down the hallway, I'm a 67-year-old man, and I probably looked ridiculous, but I skipped down the hallway because these kids were skipping, and they invited me to join them. And if, for those of you who haven't tried it, you really need to skip.
I'm going to do that very soon.
It is just joy to do it. It brings you right back to being a child again, and having that just yeah, I can do anything. I'm going to be an astronaut when I grow up. So, yes, when Miss Sara asked about the book and the way that it connected with so many people, we have all been in that place of going outside ourselves and not taking care of ourselves. So it was a sheer joy to really write and be involved with all of this.
Bless you. Yes, so Scott's chapter is chapter 14, taking my cape off, saving myself instead of saving the world. and isn't that so true? It is about, well, first and foremost, ourself. Then we can actually support, in, as you said, Scott, in a way that we can't if we're constantly doing for others. So have you got a question you'd like to ask the ladies?
Well, one of the thing, choosing love over fear, really struck me when I saw that, because I find that most people make decisions based on fear. Their experience has taught them that if I do X, then something bad will happen. So in the future, I can't do that. Or it might not be perfect, or it might not be something that I'm comfortable with. So to each of you, is there, when you're making a decision, how do you choose love over fear in order to make the decision, and what does it look like?
Well, I want to say that spiritually, love is all there is. But of course, we're in a body, we have an ego in its third dimension. And if I stay in the third dimension, I'm going to be surrounded by the world's angst. I have the ability to, through various exercises, through working on myself, and it takes a lot of work. I'm not suggesting it's an easy thing, because we choose how we're going to act, feel, think, moment to moment as we work through our day. I get up in the morning and I can say, oh, my hair looks terrible. I had a bad hair day today. I actually did. It's very humid in New York. I thought, but I'm going to have a good day. I'm choosing love. If I meet someone and they say something to me and I feel an issue about it, instead of blaming them for what they're saying to me, I can say, this is an opportunity to learn about myself. What can I change? Do I need to change something? What can I remember? Because these interactions are given to us as gifts from Creator, not to punish, but to allow us to grow. And what we can do is, I say in the chapter, and to myself and to my clients, rather than the third dimensional angst, why not hang up, jump into the love vibration, hang out there. And so it's a choice that we make. Now, having said that, there's a lot of, I hope you can still hear me because my picture is gone, but yeah, there's a lot of work there's a lot of work to be done. We have grieving, we have issues, wounds, we all have a struggle. So the idea is to work through by writing, by doing the grieving stages of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, by speaking to a friend, choosing uplifting friends, because we have a choice. We can't just say, oh, I'm going to be positive, la-di-da. I can be positive and I'm going to deal with that issue, but I'm not going to dwell there.
Thank you, Linda. Can I suggest you potentially come out and come back in again, so that hopefully we can continue to see you?
Okay.
Okay, we'll
Hope
carry
to see
on.
you soon.
Thank you.
And Beth.
I love what you said about a cape, actually, but I think now what I try and do is put a love cape on, literally to hire my, as Linda says, it is the purest, it is what we're all seeking, pure and unconditional love. But we do live in a very judgy society, and, it's very easy. And I know in my past, I've been very critical, not only of self, but of other people, very judgy, left is right is right. So I'm constantly battling that, because again, when I said to you about going back to when I was a child, I was I was all love, you know, like you were just saying about skipping, you know, I was smelling flowers, I was playing with friends, you know, and it's important to try and stay in that vibration. But I know that when it's very important for me actually, because when I go and see my clients, who are in sometimes very desperate circumstances, I literally do remind myself to literally stay in the love, you know, to with no judgment. It doesn't matter how bad the property is or how and it's hard sometimes because some of them are quite challenging, you know, but it's just constantly reminding. I think as you know, we were saying earlier about being a work in progress, you know, and I'm no angel. I have to work on myself all the time and not slide into that critical, you know, slightly Eeyore-ish, because actually the bigger part of me is actually Tigger, you know, from Winnie the Pooh, and to remember that, you know, because we can all, particularly if we're in negative environments, you know, so I sound like I'm waffling here, but I think the thing is, it's something. I do a lot of meditations now, and I always do. I'm a big fan of Louise Hay, and I always start the day with like a Louise Hay meditation, you know, and I'm very much a fan of Abraham Hicks as well. So, you know, the raising of the vibration basically. And, you know, we're all vibrational beings, and it's so important that we just keep ourselves, even if we kind of hover down, you got to put yourself back up again. And that whatever that needs to be done, whether it's connecting with nature, having quiet things, doing a Sudoku, reading a book, you know, self-care, you know, to keep your vibration high, really, which, as we all know, it's quite hard, isn't it? You know, sometimes I know where I live, it's not always great, even though I love it, but you know, it's just important that I think that we all do try to stay in that higher vibration, and that takes a bit of work.
But as I said, we're all human. We're here to have the experiences we're here to have. And I think for me, to be able to stay as much as possible in that love vibration rather than that fear vibration is to keep as much of the fear creating news out of my life as possible. And I know I've said this on numerous occasions. I do not listen to the news.
No, I don't either.
I haven't done for years. And it brings so much peace into my life. I know what's going on. I am aware of what's going on, but I don't let it bombard me 24/7. It comes in tiny little dribs and drabs. Usually from my friend I share the house with, and comes in and says, oh, so-and-so's done this and so-and-so's done that. And it's just like, I don't actually need to know. It's not that I'm saying I want to ignore what's going out there. It's say, actually, the most important thing is my peace, so that the energies I bring are higher vibrational energies. And the more of us that can bring those loving, caring energies into our daily lives for ourselves and therefore for others, our vibration is therefore much higher and can help negate many more people's negative energy. A simple little thing, I stopped doing Facebook, and they've got all these little emojis underneath, whether you can like it, you want to cry, you want to be angry, whatever. I will never, ever hit the anger button. It might be something that I'm not happy about, but by hitting the anger button, you're adding to that negative energy out there. So if you can go for care, if you can go for tears, if you can go for one, I wouldn't obviously go for the great big smile, but if you can go for something other than, oh, just don't respond at all, but don't put that negative energy further out there. And so it is up to each of us to choose the loving, caring aspect of everything. But forgive yourself. If you get wound up by something, You're allowed to do that. It's just don't live in it.
Yeah.
I have a thing I've said, and I've again repeated this. I release it to the light with love, because if I have that sense of something, I invite it to be wrapped in love for it to be released to source. So, Scott, your thoughts on the same thing?
So there were 27 authors in this book, which is phenomenal. And everybody starts or has a point in their life where they start questioning, right? Whether it's 13, 32, or 82, there is a point where you start questioning, is this all there is? Is this what life can be, should be, has been? Can I make it more? The traumas in my life, I lost a daughter and I lost my wife. And that was the story I told myself, that of those losses. Through the years, after self-healing, self-exploration, I've realized it's a story, but it's not my total story. It isn't about just the loss. There was a lot of life lived in between. I was married for 40 years. So there was so much that did happen that was positive. And as we've gone along, and I told the story, it's a part of. It is not my story. It is a part of it. And the story I'm telling now is where I am now in my present, where there is joy, where there is abundance, where my life is full. So the question I have for our guests is, what was the defining moment to allow you to open up, to become to the next level, to ask the questions and to seek the answers? Beth, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, I do. It was actually when my father died. My father passed away in 2009. And of course, you're realistic, aren't you, about parents getting older and passing away and everything. But I was absolutely floored. I remember thinking, I don't know how I'm going to navigate through this. But just before he passed, my dad wasn't really much of a chatter. He didn't really say an awful lot, apart from things about golf and stuff like that. But as he was due to pass, he literally had a couple of days left. He leant towards me and he said, "Be happy." And I just knew that he was almost knowing that I wasn't, that that's all he wanted for me, was to be happy. And it was at that moment, really, then I actually got introduced to The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. And, I'd never read a book like that before. And I'd been introduced to it years before. And I thought it was some get rich quick selling scheme. And also I didn't particularly like the person who gave it to me. So there's another thing, isn't there? I was like, what are you trying to say about me? You're saying I'm negative. But I did read it. In fact, I read The Power, first of all. And of course, that is all about love. And it was like the floodgates just opened, and I could not get more books quick enough. Brian Weiss, Many Lives, Many Masters, Dolores Cannon. I was literally all in. It was like Louise Hay, Eckhart Tolle. I must have read 120 books in a very short space of time, either between an actual physical. And it really was that light bulb moment where I thought, there is a different way to be. There is a different way. And I often question this, like, what did I think when I was younger? But I would have that moment where I knew the record that was coming on the radio. Like, I would have that from quite a young age. And I always used to think, ooh, what's that about? A little bit excited and a little bit scared, if you know what I mean. And I even remember reading a book when I was 11, and it was all about fairies. And I remember thinking, oh, are there fairies? And then looking behind the tree and the bushes. So there was, how sometimes you just have that thing, don't you? There is just a I know so many people that are spiritual, we share this, like, well, what were you like? Oh, I love shiny things, or, you know, there's something, isn't there? And then you get those paths. But yeah, that was the defining moment for me, I think, my father passing, and the love I felt for him and what he said to me about being happy, because I actually felt like saying to him, I promise you, Dad, I am going to be happy. I am going to get there. If I have to fight every step of the way and read 120 books and then read another 100 more, you know. So I feel so happy that I've got there, because I feel like it's for him, really. So yeah, that was my defining moment.
Beautiful. Linda.
I think of two major ones. One, when I knew that I had to divorce my second husband and go out on my own, face my fears, and to become more creative, I needed to leave him because we just were not growing together. So the failure of the marriage became a new start and a wonderful beginning for my freedom and my moving forward independently. A major happening was around the time of 9/11, the bombings of the trade towers. At around that time, I had this itchiness to seek spiritual knowledge. I had read a book that my sister gave me. I sat on the floor of my home and I closed my eyes, and I knew I could see the universe in my third eye. And I just celebrated that moment. I write about it in my book, The A Train to Sedona. So I found this clairvoyant healer, and I weekly went to meditations, and people were talking about things I had never heard of before. I was raised in a religious home, so everything was very usual, nothing like Sanskrit and Saint Germain and multiple lives, and it just exploded into my knowledge that I had, but wasn't aware of at the time. And I went for healings. We meditated weekly for a long time. For 9 years, I was a member of that group. And I went for healings every couple of weeks, every 3 weeks. And I had such an experience, such an awakening, that I wanted to share this with others. Especially because my road was meandering. It meandered, and I didn't know where to go, who to go to, what to think. And I thought, let me share this so that I can help others with their journey. And then I was told by someone a long time ago that I was born with something covering my throat. So the idea that through my work, I would push that aside and let my voice be heard. And I feel that my voice is being heard, and that I am helping to allow people to choose their own transformation. Because my story is just one story. There are so many ways to move toward love and compassion and enlightenment. People can choose, but it can be very inspiring to hear someone else's successful story, even though I'm still a work in progress, as we're saying. We're never finished. We're always infinitely growing. So those are my two defining moments.
Beautiful.
The defining moment for me came thanks to a broken jaw. Our dentist broke it extracting a wisdom tooth. I didn't know it was broken for a week. And that was the catalyst, because it resulted in 6 months of pain and sleepless nights, which then resulted in complete exhaustion. And for a people pleaser, you can't keep doing it. I didn't have children, which for that I am very grateful, but I was trying to run the home, working full time, studying accountancy and being a people pleaser, all at the same time. And it was I can't keep doing this. I am so tired. And people pleasing actually is the most exhausting of all of those, I think, to be perfectly honest, because you are constantly on edge and thinking about what can I do for others. I felt I was unloved, unlovable, unworthy, on all the the negative stuff. And so I had to be the people pleaser with the hope that people would like me for a little while, but I never ever believed that it could last. And that's all down to the very early story in my life. And it was that, right, okay, the studying the accountancy went. The people pleasing started to go. And then the marriage went. And that was my doing. And then the job actually got taken away as well. So, you know, but that was actually fine. And it was the job dissolving that actually brought me to where I live now, because the company got taken over. But it was when I made that decision that the most important thing was to let go of my marriage. And that's when the universe took the job away. And the universe gave me that opportunity to move. And it was suddenly, so what's important is we take control of our life. Well, they say actually, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. I didn't have a plan, but by holding on to things that aren't right for you, you don't make way for the things that are meant to be coming towards you. And so by letting go of all those things, it was, don't get me wrong, it happened over a period of time, because I did go back to the accountancy study and I did get the second year of it and then stopped. But so I did continue with that. But the people pleasing became less and less and less. And I suppose the biggest moment was standing in the kitchen at home and getting that light bulb. Why am I worrying about what other people think about me when they're not? And it was just like, because they're not. They've got so much going on in their own life.
And they're too busy worrying about themselves.
Exactly.
What you think of them.
100%. And it was just like, and it was almost as if a weight lifted off my shoulders. I don't have to worry about what other people think about me. Scott.
Wow.
So when there was a point when I got to, and having, I'm a girl dad, so I have my daughters, and I always was there for them. No matter what they needed, I would jump and stop and just do for them all the time. And after my wife passed, I started doing things for me. My daughter called me up and was angry. I said, "What's the matter?" She said, You're not the same person anymore." Sure I am. "No, you're not. You're not the same person anymore." And it really made me stop and think, because before I offered to help somebody, I would take a breath, a simple breath. Right before I said yes, or before I jumped, I took a breath. And it really made me pause. Is this mine? Do I need to do that? And I would ask myself that question. So all of a sudden, my daughters, rather than me being the first phone call they made and me jumping and getting everything taken care of, they started doing things for themselves or finding other ways to do it. And I realized that I was getting in the way of their growing up. They were adults. They were married. One had 3 kids. And I was still doing all of those things for them. Of course, unfortunately, they both married men that didn't know which end of the hammer to hold. But it was selfish of me to take that opportunity away from them. And many relationships changed because of my that one little breath, to not automatically say, yep, I'll be right there. I lost friends, but I gained so much more because I realized why we were friends. And the people that are in my life are there because there is a mutuality in the giving. It isn't just one way. And by the way, my mom taught me that if you love somebody, you work for them, you do things for them. She taught me that. It served me well when I was taking care of my wife through 20 years of breast cancer. It did well when I was, and my daughter who was multiply handicapped. It served me well. However, when I wasn't in survival mode, when I wasn't in caregiving mode, when I was suddenly thrown into me mode, it did not serve me very well. And in doing that, I really, truly found myself. And as I've said a few times before, I'm now living my best 18-year-old self. Because I travel, I teach, I write, I do all the things I thought I was going to be doing when I graduated high school, right? I'm doing all those things now. And the joy in my life is every day when I wake up. I look forward to the day. I embrace it. There is gratitude for absolutely everything in my life. I have this joy. The question that I would ask our guests is, where and how do you find that joy now? And did finding yourself and not being that other person as you've grown, how did that change things? Two questions, but Linda, what do you think?
I find joy in simple things. Now, it does give me joy to have our book be published, my book be published, getting certain accreditations. That's all joyful. But daily, as they accumulate, looking at a beautiful summer day, I was reading from a blog where I was in my office, this beautiful office that I no longer have, and the workmen were drilling outside so loudly that at one point my client and I had to be yelling to hear each other. And every time I felt anger come up, I said, they're doing their job. And the anger went away because I respect when people are doing their job. The whole afternoon was like that. And every time it came up, I said, they're doing their job. And the anger just left me. I'm getting ready to go home. It's about 4:35 in the afternoon. And one of the workmen looks in at me with the biggest smile. And I smiled back. It is such a moment that I will remember. Because had I been huffing and puffing about all the noise that was disturbing my quiet place, he would have picked up the negativity, and we wouldn't have had that like a burst of sunshine, a burst of love. That was a joyful moment. There are joyful moments when I see my children doing things. There are joyful moments as I ride my bicycle in Prospect Park. Sometimes when I'm in my home, in my apartment, and it's raining, I feel cozy. That's joyful. And then I have a non-guilty pleasure, which is very dark chocolate, like 85% cacao. And that brings joy to me and excitement. The excitement centers in my brain light up. So I didn't remember the last part, the other question that you asked me, Scott.
How has not being a people pleaser or changing and people looking at you like perhaps you are selfish? How has that changed? Where that changed?
I remember, and I wrote this in my memoir, I was just wanting to think differently. I had to tease out a lot of information because I had a very loving family, yet it was a group love rather than be an individual within that group. I had to pull myself out of it And I remember walking with my brother, whom I love dearly. I'm the oldest, he's after me, and we have 2 younger sisters. And he has his arm around me. We're in his backyard. And I said, I just want you to know that I don't think the way you do, I don't feel the way you do, and I don't act the way you do. And he said to me, where do we get you? And I had to set boundaries. This was very painful. And I actually had to, I'm sort of out of the loop. I'm always welcome to do things, but I have to stay out of the loop because I'm independently assertive and I need more complex things than the rest of the family, it seems to me. So I mentioned in one of my chapters that I'm considered to be odd when I was becoming spiritual. You're crazy. And I wrote that I'm a pain in the buttocks. And I was very blunt in the writing. So 2 people said, no, just stubborn maybe. And I think in order to be assertive, sometimes I have to be stubborn. And therefore I can't be not manipulated, but brought into the group thinking, the group way of doing things. And it's still in progress because the family is an Italian family, although we're Russian and Romanian as well, but they do a lot of things together all the time. Boy, I wouldn't have time to do that. I have a show, I have all these things that I'm juggling. So it's a work in progress, but it allows me to love me. Scott.
Beautiful.
Cycling on my bike on the beach. And when I do it, I feel so much joy that when people are coming towards me, they're smiling too. It's like you connect on that level. I always used to love being on my bike, and I was lucky enough to live in Los Angeles for a time, and I used to cycle. And one of my biggest joys was cycling down Santa Monica Boulevard, and I used to sing this Sheryl Crow song to myself over and over in my head, and then laugh because I just couldn't believe that I was living this life. And then when I used to hit that beach, I used to think to myself, come on, get off the cycle path, you tourists, because literally the cycle path was. And I remember we all used to have almost like an unspoken code of like, who can just cycle as fast as you possibly can on the beach path. And of course, when I came back to London, I didn't transfer that. It's much more difficult to cycle around London. But of course, now here, where I am in Dorset, I can cycle. So yeah, it brings me just the most incredible joy. But actually some really simple things as well. So when I come home from a day, whatever the day is, I always make myself a cup of tea, kick off my shoes, sit, and I always light a candle, and I always say my grateful that, what are my gratitudes and what am I grateful for today? Even if it's been a challenging day and I am pooped, I'll just sit there and find the good in that day, because I think that kind of resets my mind, because might be challenged quite often. It can be quite challenging. But yeah, a cup of tea. I don't know. It's very British, I know, but there's something about it. I love it so much. Normal tea. And getting into bed. I love reading. I am absolutely a bookworm. And I got myself hooked up, as I said before, about, reading all these personal development, self-help books. But I read a while ago that it was very important that you have fiction, that you read fiction for your brain, because we need to step outside. And when I get myself a good book, I cannot wait to go to bed to read it. And if I'm too tired and I can't read it, I'm absolutely gutted, So if I can make myself go to bed early, which is the challenge, I have to say. But when I do, just that act of getting into bed is so nurturing. And isn't it incredible how you can feel joy from such simple things that maybe some other people take for granted? And then going back to how you're saying about how I've changed, it's a couple of weekends ago, I went to a party, and there's a crowd of people that do everything together. They literally hang out in a very, very big group, and there's always more joining, and it's called Meetup, and there's all these characters, and it's very, very strong energy, big characters and everything. And over the last few years, I've not been seeing them so much, and I'm sure they probably think, oh, she's changed. She's gone all woo-woo. Well, yeah, I have actually. But before, I was beating myself up and thinking, people pleasing me. Oh, they're going to think that I'm not very nice anymore. But I'm not. I'm just different. I think differently than them. I can't think the way. I can't have the conversations with them that they have. And so I've been avoiding them. But on Saturday, a couple of Saturdays ago, I walked into that party and I just felt so happy and calm and peaceful, and was able to interact with them. And they interacted with me differently as well. It's almost like they've got a bit of respect that I'm not this messy character that when I first met them was partying as hard as they were. You know, they kind of respect now that, you know, and they were talking about parties and things. And I said, I admire you guys with your energy, but I need to preserve my energy. So, you know, I won't be going to that. And I never was like that before. I was like, yeah, I'll go. Yes, I'll go. Oh, that sounds really tiring. Yeah, I'll be there. But now, you know, it's because I want to feel that joy. I don't want to have those down times and be exhausted. And because I definitely think when I get tired, I can definitely be not down, but flatter. And it's harder to bounce back up from it. So if I can just stay and keep my energy preserved, have those peaceful, joyful times, then I'm good for other people. And it does have such a positive effect with other people as well, doesn't it? You know, your relationships change.
So if I may, so what you're saying is the establishment of boundaries really changed the way that you related to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah. I find that boundaries, I never had them, and now I have them, and I don't use them as solid walls, castle walls built up. Mm-hmm. I use the affirmation of speed bumps. People have, when they're coming toward you, have to slow down a bit, right? And you always hear the bump bump as they go over it, and it just kind of gives you that little tingle and saying, okay, somebody's close. All right, do we want them here? How do we want to handle it? And that way I can be much more present with them and be, you know, just have that boundary of, well, do I want to deal with this or not?
Yeah. Thank you, Scott, because you really clarified what I was trying to say there, because just referring to this party and this situation again. So when their energy became really, really, and they were up and they were talking about this, that, and the other, I just went, oh, do excuse me a moment. And I just went into the kitchen and I had some water and I started talking to someone who was a lot more quieter and everything. And then I came back, and it's like those, like you say, those boundaries, they aren't solid walls, but they're kind of protecting me a bit in a way, because I could get myself caught up there. I do get really tired in their energy just because it's so, they're bouncing off the walls, you know. And the fact that I could do that and sit so calmly and not get caught up as well in their dramas and their lives.
And in doing that, you're teaching them how to behave to you. You're teaching them. You're letting them know who you and what you are, and you're letting them know, look, I got these. It's okay. You do your thing. No judgment, but it's not for me.
I've got to know some very younger girls recently, and I've only known them in the last year. So it's all quite new. We seem to have gelled really well. But a few months ago, we were in London, and we'd all had a lovely time partying. You know, it was absolutely brilliant. But I can be really, I know I'm talking on obviously this show, but be really, really quiet. And on the way home, I was quiet, looking out the window of the train and everything. And my friends were all, and when one of them, you know, quite lively and everything. And one of them said to me afterwards, she messaged me and she said, I really want to apologize for the way I was. You know, I'm a bit excitable and I was very loud on the train. And she said, oh, you're so serene and full of grace. And she said, I could learn a lot from you. And I thought it was really nice. And I said to her, you never have to apologize for being who you are. You are who you are. I said, actually, I probably was falling asleep. I could sleep on a sixpence. And I said, but don't ever change the way you are. You are, but I do need that little, you know, put my headphones in, just have that little quiet moment, that little hamster moment, you know, just to restore, not the hamster on the wheel, but the hamster kind of burying inside and just having a little rest. And then I can spring back up again.
We aren't too long before the end of the program. The time's flown. Thank you so much. But what I'd like to do is ask each of you if there's something that we haven't touched on, but you actually feel you would like to share. So I'm going to come to you first, Linda.
I was thinking of assertion because it fits into setting boundaries, to saying no. And I see assertion as essential for love and compassion, because if I have a need, saying it out, I may not get the need met, but I've said it, I've announced who I am, and I might even be able to allow myself to give that to myself. So I see assertion as respecting, asserting my rights, asserting myself while respecting the rights of others. And assertion is, we always have to choose when to be assertive. I don't think I can be assertive all day long or every day, every week, but to choose when I'm going to be that way. Because my self-love rests upon that. To say, this is who I am, this is what I need, and I want you to know that. And it's part of setting boundaries as well. And that it's part of compassion surprises people sometimes. But I think we have to have self-compassion before we can give it out.
Beth.
I'd say, I don't know if it's really touched it or not, but I think speaking your truth, speaking your truth, but with love. People talk a lot, don't they? Or you should speak your truth, speak your truth. So I was thinking about that, and I thought, well, if we all went around speaking exactly as we thought, it'd be quite a messy world, wouldn't it? Talk about boundaries. It's like there'd be no. Can you imagine if you had just literally? And I thought that the other day, and I thought, well, when I share something now, it's about speaking my truth, yes, but it's speaking it in a way where love comes first. It's I would never speak my truth if I felt was really going to offend somebody, like my views, or I don't want to be a people pleaser in that way. And if they asked me what my views were spiritually or any other way, I'd be honest. But I never think, I think a lot, as I say, I think a lot about that, speaking my truth. Well, I speak my truth, but with kindness, really, and listening to the other person as well, and respecting their views. So I don't know if we've touched on that, but I think that again is very parts of me of the I didn't want to be, I'm no longer wanting to be manipulated. I didn't become selfish, because I know when I split with my husband, I did it in the most, if you'd seen it, you would have cried. It was like, I spoke with the most gentle of tones, and I said to him, I love you so much, and it breaks my heart that it's come to this, but I no longer can just not say how I've been feeling for a very long time. And I'm sorry that I'm doing it now. You could argue that I could have done it and should have done it before, but I didn't. I didn't have the courage. I didn't have the strength. And I often think about that conversation, because it was sad, but it was peaceful, if you know what I mean, And I think a lot of people say, going back to the whole thing about the speaking of the truth, it is important that we speak our truth and be honest to who we are, but to do it in a way where there is love and mutual respect, basically, of someone else's opinions and views as well.
Scott.
So I don't know if you find this, but I have a hard time with now just minor conversations. I'd love to have deep conversations. I want to know people. I want to ask the questions. I want to be impacted by what they have to share. And one of the biggest reasons I love this is we get to talk like this. We can't do this every day. You're getting a cup of coffee, or you go to Dunkin' Donuts, or you can't really have those kind of conversations. But we get to have these conversations here and get to meet people who are on this level, who have the same conviction for conversation, who want to share themselves, and they are open enough to be able to share themselves. And that is absolutely amazing. And because of this book that Sara has put together, the ability to meet people from all over the world that feel this way, there's really a lot to this, right? A couple thousands of people thought, oh, Sarah's got something there. Have connected with that, and it's amazing. And we get to have these conversations and keep having them. And thank you, Sara, for enabling that to happen.
Oh, my pleasure. I love it. I love having these conversations. And if you like, I go out of my way to sort of try and meet people so that I can keep having these conversations. Because if you can have conversations with like-minded people, you can go as deep as you like. You can say things that I've got a group of friends who are definitely not on this level. They are definitely not. You start talking about angels and it's just like, not interested in that. Not that. It's just like, okay, fine. I know they're not on that level. But to have the conversations and be able to say some of the things I know about myself, I know about my soul, if you like, and my experiences, to be able to talk about those openly. So connect as much as you can. And if it sadly means letting go, I mean, I do see those friends not very often now, because they are not my energies anymore. I have grown way beyond, but they knew me before I even started this journey. So I've known them for sort of 25, 26 years. So yes, it's just one of those things, but I don't make it an every week thing because they're not my energies anymore. But if our energies can support other people to sort of find that tap into something new, so it's never hold it back totally. Just allow yourself to be yourself. Allow them to be themselves. I think that's the important thing, because you never know. One day, one of them might just start asking questions.
Yeah, I'm finding that actually with a few of my friends. Just a little thing like, oh, do you do that gong bar thing? Or I did a drumming thing the other day and I quite liked it. I went to Stonehenge and there was a lot of people asking me about that. Never thought coming out of mouths of people. So there is and I love that when they ask, what was it like? Did you feel anything? I love that so much. That brings me joy because like I say, that you're going to have deeper conversations with those people, aren't you? And things are shifting.
Absolutely. I've popped Linda's and Beth's websites into the chat. What I'm also going to do is make sure if you're watching the video via YouTube, I'm going to put their website. So it's lindamarsanico.com and it's thelifestyleconcept.co.uk. Because Beth actually doesn't live that far from me. So so yes, please, if you feel, and I'll make sure Scott's there and mine's there, please, if you feel that something's resonated here for you and you wish to connect or learn more about any of us, please do that. This is why we do this, to support you. And that's why these programs are sort of all free. So sort of please, and feel free if you've got someone you think, oh, they might enjoy this, share it. We put it out there to touch lives. We know it'll touch the lives when it is meant to. So a massive thank you to Linda, to Beth, to Scott for joining me on this program. It's been an absolute pleasure. And next week, I'm being joined by Dan Stillman, and he's going to be sharing route map method, which I'm looking forward to learning more about. So take care, be safe, stay well. See you all again soon. Namaste, sweet soul.